At our monthly family dinner, Mom smiled warmly while passing the mashed potatoes. Dad cracked his usual jokes about my cooking skills, and my sister Madison called me the best sister ever while squeezing my hand. The perfect American family scene. I set down my fork, looked each of them in the eye, and laughed. "I'm done with all of you." The room froze. "For what?" they shouted in unison. I stood up slowly. "I know what you're plotting against me." Their faces turned ghost white. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been organizing Mom's closet as a birthday surprise when I found the folder hidden behind old photo albums. Legal documents, bank statements, investment portfolios, all in my grandmother's name, who'd passed away 6 months ago. But what made my blood run cold was the sticky note on top in Dad's handwriting, "Doreen can't know until after." After what I photographed everything with shaking hands. The documents showed Grandma Dorothy had left me her entire estate worth $3.2 million. But there were transfer papers already drafted to move everything to Madison's name, citing my mental instability. The papers were dated for next month. The discovery hit me like a physical blow. I sat on Mom's bedroom floor, surrounded by shoes and handbags, trying to process what I was seeing. My hands trembled as I flipped through page after page of legal documentation. There were psychiatric evaluation forms with my name already filled in consent papers for treatment facilities, and worst of all, a detailed timeline of my supposed deteriorating mental state, going back 2 years. I remembered that timeline clearly. 2 years ago, I'd gone through a brutal divorce from my ex-husband, Mark. He'd cheated with his secretary, a cliché so pathetic it would have been funny if it hadn't shattered my world. I'd taken time off work, seen a therapist, cried at family dinners. Normal reactions to betrayal and loss. But according to these documents, those normal reactions were evidence of mental illness. The folder contained more than just legal papers. There were photographs of me at various family events with handwritten notes. One showed me laughing at my nephew's birthday party with the caption, "Manic episode another," captured me. Crying at Grandma Dorothy's funeral labeled excessive emotional response. They'd been building this case against me while smiling to my face. I carefully photographed each document, making sure to capture every detail. The transfer papers were the most damning. They'd already established Madison as my proposed conservator, giving her complete control over my finances, medical decisions, and living arrangements. The signature lines were blank, waiting for a judge's approval. The hearing was scheduled for exactly 32 days from now. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Hey sis, can't wait to see you for Sunday brunch. Love you." The hypocrisy made me nauseous. I quickly closed the folder, returned it to its hiding spot, and finished organizing the closet as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. My family, the people I'd trusted most in the world, were conspiring to steal my inheritance and have me declared mentally incompetent. As I drove home that evening, my mind raced through every recent interaction with my family. Dad's sudden interest in my work stress, Mom's probing questions about my sleep patterns, Madison's constant check-ins about whether I was taking care of myself. It all made horrible sense now. They weren't concerned about me, they were gathering ammunition. The most painful part was how meticulously they'd planned this betrayal. The folder showed months of preparation, careful documentation, strategic moves. While I'd been grieving Grandma Dorothy, leaning on them for support, they'd been plotting to take everything she'd left me. The woman who'd raised me after school taught me to bake, shared her wisdom, and her love had wanted me to have security and independence, and my family wanted to steal it all. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. Not the scheming faces I now knew existed, but the loving faces I'd believed in for 32 years. The father who'd taught me to ride a bike, the mother who'd nursed me through chickenpox, the sister who'd been my maid of honor. Were those memories real, or had I always been just an obstacle to them? I couldn't confront them immediately. Instead, I played detective in my own family. During Sunday brunch, I casually mentioned feeling grateful for family support during my difficult time last year when I'd taken a mental health break after my divorce. Mom exchanged a quick glance with Madison. "Of course, sweetie. We're always here for you," Mom said, patting my hand with practiced concern. That evening, I overheard Mom on the phone. "Dr. Harrison, yes, we'll need those records from last year for the documentation. My therapist from my divorce. They were building a case." I checked our shared family calendar and noticed a new appointment. Family meeting with attorney. Doreen not required. The next few days became an exercise in paranoia and performance. I maintained my usual routine, going to work at the marketing firm where I'd been promoted to senior account manager just 6 months ago. My colleagues noticed nothing unusual, praising my recent campaign that had landed a major retail client. If I was mentally unstable, I was certainly high-functioning. But at home, I turned into a spy. I installed a recording app on my phone, carefully documenting every interaction with my family. When Dad called to ask about my weekend plans, I recorded his probing questions about my social life, his subtle suggestions that I seemed isolated. When Madison invited me shopping, I captured her attempts to steer conversations toward my emotional state, her feigned worry when I mentioned feeling tired. The shared family calendar became my window into their conspiracy. New entries appeared regularly, always with that same notation, "Doreen not required." There were meetings with someone named Dr. Bradley, consultations with the Riverside Mental Health Facility, appointments at the Preston Law Firm. They were building an entire case structure around me while I went about my daily life. One evening, I decided to test them. I called Madison, putting a slight waver in my voice. "I've been having such vivid dreams about Grandma," I said. "Sometimes I feel like she's still here, you know, like I can smell her perfume in my apartment." The lie tasted bitter, but I needed to see how she'd react. Madison's response was immediate and calculating. "Oh, Doreen, that's concerning. Are you seeing things, hearing voices? Maybe you should talk to someone professional about these experiences." I could practically hear her taking notes. Within an hour, Mom called with similar questions, and by bedtime, Dad had texted, asking if I needed him to drive me to work because I seemed confused lately. The coordination was chilling. They operated like a well-oiled machine, each playing their role in the narrative they were constructing. I was the fragile daughter, the unstable sister, the woman who couldn't handle a large inheritance. They were the loving family reluctantly stepping in to protect me from myself. I started documenting everything on my end, too. Screenshots of text messages, recordings of calls, notes about their behavior. I created a secure cloud storage account they didn't know about and backed up everything multiple times. If they wanted to play this game, I'd make sure I had my own evidence. The hardest part was sitting through family dinners, smiling and laughing while knowing what they were planning. Mom would serve my favorite foods, telling stories about my childhood, all while probably calculating how much longer she'd have to pretend to care. Dad would joke about my promotion at work, even as he planned to argue I was too unstable to manage money. Madison would hug me goodbye, already spending my inheritance in her mind. During one particularly difficult dinner, Grandma Dorothy's empty chair seemed to loom large at the table. She'd always sat at the head, dispensing wisdom and keeping the peace. I wondered if she'd had any idea what would happen after she was gone. Had she suspected, is that why she'd left everything to me instead of dividing it equally? "You're quiet tonight, Doreen." Mom observed, her voice honeyed with false concern. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Just missing Grandma. This was her favorite meal." They all nodded sympathetically, played their parts perfectly. But I caught the look that passed between them. Another note for their files: excessive grief, inability to move forward. Every normal human emotion was being weaponized against me. I hired a private investigator using my savings. Within days, he uncovered the truth. My family had been meeting with estate lawyers for months, presenting fabricated evidence of my deteriorating mental state. They'd been documenting every glass of wine I drank at dinner, every joke about being crazy busy at work, every time I'd cried during my divorce proceedings. The PI found emails between Madison and our cousin Jake, a psychologist, discussing how to word a professional assessment that would support their claim. "Doreen's always been fragile," Madison had written. "This is for her own good. She couldn't handle that kind of money." The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. The private investigator, a former FBI agent named Robert Chen, had come highly recommended. When I'd first walked into his office, I'd felt like a character in a crime novel. But as he presented his findings 2 weeks later, the reality was worse than any fiction I could have imagined. "Your family has been planning this for approximately 8 months," Robert said, sliding a thick folder across his desk. "Initial discussions began shortly after your grandmother's first hospitalization, when it became clear her estate was substantial. 8 months. While Grandma Dorothy was still alive fighting cancer with the grace and dignity she'd shown throughout her life, my family was already plotting to steal her legacy." The folder contained email printouts, text message records, and even photographs of my family meeting with various professionals. The emails were particularly damning. Madison had created a dedicated email account just for coordinating the conspiracy. She'd reached out to cousin Jake, who worked as a psychologist in Denver, offering to pay him for a professional opinion about my mental state. Jake's response was cautious but willing. "I haven't seen Doreen in 3 years, but based on what you've described and my limited observations at family gatherings, I could potentially support an assessment of adjustment disorder with mixed features." Adjustment disorder, a normal response to life stressors like divorce and grief, twisted into a weapon against me. Jake went on to outline how they could build a case, document any emotional outburst changes in spending habits, social isolation or statements suggesting confusion or paranoia. The key is establishing a pattern of deterioration. There were emails with the Preston law firm discussing strategies for conservatorship. The lawyer, a man named William Preston, had apparently handled similar cases before. "The family's unanimous concern will carry significant weight," he'd written. "If we can demonstrate that Ms. Doreen Brooks lacks the capacity to manage a substantial inheritance, the court will likely approve the conservatorship petition." Robert had also uncovered financial records showing my family's desperate situation. Dad had taken out a second mortgage on the house, supposedly for renovations that never happened. Madison and her husband Carl were drowning in debt from Carl's failed restaurant venture. Mom had been slowly draining her retirement account to maintain their lifestyle. They weren't just greedy, they were desperate. "There's more." Robert said, his expression grave. He showed me records of them accessing my credit report, my medical records from the divorce therapy, even attempting to get information from my employer about my work performance. They'd been building a comprehensive picture of my life, looking for any crack they could exploit. The most shocking discovery was a draft letter Madison had written, but apparently never sent, found in her email drafts. In it, she poured out her real feelings. Doreen always was Grandma's favorite. Even as kids, she got the special treatment, the extra attention. Now she gets everything. It's not fair. That money belongs to all of us. If we have to protect her from herself to make things right, so be it. There it was in black and white. This wasn't about protecting me. It was about jealousy, entitlement, and greed dressed up as concern. Robert had done surveillance too. He had photographs of my family entering the Riverside Mental Health Facility, where they'd met with administrators about involuntary commitment procedures. Photos of them at the courthouse filing preliminary paperwork. Pictures of Dr. Bradley, the psychiatrist. They'd enlisted a man with a questionable reputation and a history of favorable assessments for families seeking conservatorships. In my professional opinion, Robert said they're planning to move fast after the family dinner next week. They've scheduled a psychiatric evaluation for the following Monday with a court hearing later that week. If you're going to act, it needs to be soon. I left his office with copies of everything, my mind reeling. The evidence was overwhelming, irrefutable. My family had conspired against me with the cold efficiency of professional criminals. They'd enlisted accomplices, covered their tracks, and created a paper trail designed to destroy my credibility and autonomy. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by evidence of betrayal. Every document, every email, every photograph told the same story. The people who were supposed to love me most had chosen money over family. They'd looked at me and seen not a daughter, not a sister, but an obstacle to $3.2 million. The next 2 weeks were torture. Every family interaction became a performance. Dad started calling daily to check in, something he'd never done in 32 years. Madison invited me to spa days and shopping trips, showering me with attention and gifts. Mom cooked my favorite meals and reminisced about happy memories, all while I knew they were documenting everything, building their case. I played along, smiling through the pain while secretly recording every conversation. During one particularly tender moment when Mom hugged me and whispered, "You know we only want what's best for you," I almost broke down. Almost. The daily calls from Dad were perhaps the hardest to endure. A man who'd previously called maybe once a month now suddenly needed to hear my voice every evening. "Just wanted to see how my girl's doing," he'd say, his voice warm with fabricated affection. Behind the warmth, I could hear the scratching of pen on paper, documenting our conversation. "How was work today, sweetheart? Not too stressful, I hope." "It was fine, Dad. Actually, I closed a big deal with that tech company I mentioned." "Oh, that's wonderful. You're not working too hard, are you?" Sometimes when we push ourselves too much, we can lose perspective on what's really important. Every achievement I mentioned was met with subtle concern. Every positive development in my life was questioned, undermined, twisted into potential evidence of mania or poor judgment. I learned to give neutral responses to play the role of the stable, but not too successful daughter. Madison's sudden sisterly devotion was equally nauseating. She, who had barely texted me once a month, now wanted weekly spa appointments, shopping trips, lunch dates. She showed up at my apartment with expensive gifts, designer handbags, jewelry, perfumes. Each gift came with probing questions and careful observation. "I thought this scarf would look perfect on you," she said during one visit, wrapping a silk Hermes scarf around my shoulders. "Though I noticed you haven't been dressing up much lately. Are you taking care of yourself?" I accepted the gifts graciously, knowing she was probably keeping receipts to show my impaired judgment in accepting expensive items. During our shopping trips, she'd steer me toward the most expensive stores, encouraging me to splurge. "You deserve to treat yourself," she'd insist, probably hoping I'd make extravagant purchases she could document. The spa days were intelligence-gathering missions disguised as pampering. As we sat in mud masks and terry cloth robes, Madison would probe, "So are you dating anyone? It's been over a year since the divorce. You know it's not healthy to isolate yourself." When I mentioned I was happy being single, for now focusing on my career, she'd exchange concerned looks with the esthetician, as if my contentment with solitude was deeply troubling. Mom's campaign of false affection took the form of elaborate meals and manufactured nostalgia. Every few days she'd invite me over for dinner, always cooking dishes from my childhood. She'd pull out old photo albums telling stories about happier times, all while watching me closely for signs of, what, excessive emotion. Lack of emotion, I could never be sure what response would be held against me. One evening, she made her famous pot roast, the one she'd always made for special occasions when I was young. As we ate, she launched into a story about my first day of kindergarten, how I'd been so brave, so independent. "You've always been our strong one," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Sometimes I worry that strength is just a mask, that you don't let yourself be vulnerable enough." The irony of her words, spoken while she plotted to have me declared incompetent, was suffocating. I squeezed her hand back, my recording app running on my phone, and said, "I'm doing well, Mom, really. Better than I have in years." She studied my face, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. Was claiming to be well a sign of denial? Was my composure evidence of detachment from reality? Every word I spoke was being weighed, measured, potentially twisted into evidence against me. The hardest moment came during a Sunday dinner at my parents' house. The whole family was there, including Carl Madison's husband, who seemed uncomfortable with the excessive attention being paid to me. As Mom brought out dessert, Grandma Dorothy's famous apple pie, the emotion hit me unexpectedly. This was her recipe, Mom said softly, serving me an extra-large piece. She taught it to me when your father and I first got married. Said the secret was in the way you layer the apples. The grief was real, sudden, overwhelming. Grandma Dorothy should have been there presiding over the table with her gentle humor and keen insights. Instead, her children and grandchildren were plotting to steal her final gift to me. Tears burned my eyes. "Oh, honey," Mom said, rushing to embrace me. "It's okay to cry. We all miss her so much." As she held me, whispering soothing words, I knew she was mentally adding excessive emotional response to her growing list of symptoms. The embrace that should have been comforting felt like a trap. I pulled myself together quickly, apologizing for the outburst. Never apologize for feeling things deeply. Dad said, his voice thick with false understanding. Though, if you're having trouble managing these emotions, there are people who can help. Madison nodded eagerly. "I've heard great things about grief counseling. It might help you process everything in a healthier way." They were so transparent, so eager to pathologize my every feeling. Yet I had to continue the charade, had to smile, and thank them for their concern, while rage and hurt battled inside me. I was living in an emotional minefield where every genuine human response could be used as ammunition against me. I discovered their plan was to have me involuntarily evaluated after the family dinner. The appointment with a judge was already scheduled. They'd convinced Dr. Bradley, a family friend and psychiatrist, to be on standby. I found the commitment papers in Dad's briefcase during a visit already partially filled out. That's when I decided to beat them at their own game. I contacted Grandma Dorothy's real attorney, not the one my family had hired. Turns out there was a video will that my family didn't know about, and ironically, it specifically mentioned protecting me from any family manipulation. I also reached out to my own psychiatrist and several colleagues who could testify to my mental fitness. Finding the commitment papers was purely accidental. I'd been visiting my parents on a Tuesday afternoon, bringing Mom some flowers for her garden, when Dad asked me to grab his reading glasses from his study. His briefcase sat open on the desk, and there, partially visible beneath some work documents, was a folder labeled DB Intervention. My initials, my intervention. With shaking hands, I carefully extracted the folder and photographed its contents. The petition for involuntary psychiatric evaluation was already filled out, lacking only signatures and a date. Dr. Bradley's name appeared as the recommending physician, stating he had grave concerns about Ms. Brooks' mental stability and decision-making capacity. This man had known me since I was 12, had attended my high school graduation. Party had congratulated me on my college acceptance. Now he was prepared to sign away my freedom without even speaking to me. The documents outlined their plan with military precision. After the family dinner on Saturday, they would express concern about my behavior. Dr. Bradley would arrive for what they'd present as a casual visit, but was actually a formal evaluation. Based on his predetermined findings, they'd transport me to Riverside Mental Health Facility for a 72-hour hold. During that time, they'd petition the court for emergency conservatorship, citing the danger I posed to myself given my substantial inheritance. I replaced everything carefully and retrieved Dad's glasses, my mind racing. 3 days. I had 3 days to dismantle their plan and protect myself. That evening, I made the most important phone call of my life. Directory assistants connected me with Dorothy Evelyn Brooks' actual law firm, not Preston Law, where my family had been scheming. The receptionist at Hartley & Associates put me through to Samuel Hartley himself. "Ms. Brooks." His voice was warm but professional. "I've been expecting your call, though I hoped it would be under better circumstances." My heart stopped. "You've been expecting me?" "Your grandmother was a shrewd woman. She anticipated potential complications with her estate distribution. Can you come to my office tomorrow?" "There are things you need to know." The next day, I sat in Samuel Hartley's mahogany-paneled office as he revealed the depth of Grandma Dorothy's foresight. She'd created a video will 6 months before her death, updated her written will to include specific protections, and left detailed instructions for Mr. Hartley. "She was quite clear," he said, sliding a tablet across the desk. "She wanted you to see this if there was any question about her intentions or your capacity to inherit." Grandma Dorothy appeared on screen thinner than I remembered, but with eyes still sharp as flint. She sat in this very office wearing her favorite pearl necklace. "My dearest Doreen," she began, and tears immediately blurred my vision. "If you're watching this, it means what I feared has come to pass. Your family, whom I love dearly but know too well, has let greed override love." She went on to detail her observations: Dad's financial irresponsibility, Mom's materialistic nature, Madison's jealousy and sense of entitlement. "I've watched them calculate my worth while I was still breathing," she said, her voice carrying a mix of sadness and determination. "I've seen them look at you not as family but as competition. This is why I'm leaving everything to you, Doreen, not because I love you more, but because you're the only one who loved me without counting my assets." The video continued with explicit instructions. She'd anticipated attempts to challenge my mental capacity and had insisted Mr. Hartley maintain records of my accomplishments, my stability, my character. There was also a pointed message for the family: any attempt to manipulate, coerce, or legally challenge Doreen's inheritance will result in the activation of the nuclear clause. All family members will forfeit any sentimental items, photographs, or memorabilia from my estate. Everything will be sold or donated. Mr. Hartley paused the video. "There's more, but I should tell you that your grandmother also established a legal defense fund specifically for protecting your inheritance. She transferred $200,000 to a separate account solely for legal fees if needed. My grandmother, even in death, was protecting me." The tears came freely now, grief mixed with profound gratitude. She'd known. She'd seen what I was too blinded by love to notice. "Now," Mr. Hartley said, his expression hardening, "let's discuss how we protect you from this involuntary commitment scheme." The plan we developed was comprehensive. First, I'd undergo a complete psychiatric evaluation with Dr. Sarah Winters, the head of psychiatry at the University Hospital. She was unimpeachable published and had no connection to my family. Second, we'd file a preemptive restraining order against Dr. Bradley for ethical violations, as he was preparing to evaluate me without my consent based on third-party reports. Third, we'd document everything at the family dinner, creating an evidentiary record of their attempted ambush. I spent the next 2 days in a whirlwind of preparation. Dr. Winters conducted a thorough evaluation, including cognitive testing, personality assessments, and clinical interviews. Her report was unequivocal. Ms. Brooks displays no signs of mental illness, cognitive impairment, or diminished capacity. She is articulate, insightful, and demonstrates excellent judgment and decision-making abilities. My colleagues at work, unaware of the family drama, provided character references praising my professionalism and leadership. My direct supervisor wrote about my recent promotion and successful project management. The HR director confirmed I'd never had any performance issues or behavioral concerns. We also discovered that Dr. Bradley had a pattern of providing favorable evaluations for families seeking conservatorships. 3 other cases in the past 5 years showed similar patterns: sudden concerns about mental health coinciding with substantial inheritances. Mr. Hartley's investigator found that Dr. Bradley had received significant consultation fees from the families involved. By Friday night, I had assembled my own team. Mr. Hartley would wait in his car outside my parents' house during the dinner. A process server was prepared to deliver cease and desist orders if needed. Dr. Winters was on call to refute any claims about my mental state. I'd even hired a private security firm to ensure I could leave freely if my family tried to physically prevent my departure. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd accused me of paranoia, but their actions had forced me to become exactly what they'd claimed. I was suspicious, strategic, and surrounded by professional protection. The difference was, my paranoia was justified. I also made copies of everything Grandma's video, my psychiatric evaluation, the evidence of their conspiracy, their financial records showing desperation. USB drives were stored in my bank safety deposit box, my office, and with Mr. Hartley. Cloud backups were encrypted and stored on servers they couldn't access. If they wanted a fight, I was prepared for war. The night before the dinner, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my apartment window looking out at the city lights, thinking about the family I was about to lose. Not lose, I corrected myself. Expose. They'd been lost to me the moment they'd chosen greed over love. Tomorrow would simply make it official. The week before the fateful dinner, the love bombing intensified. Madison threw me a surprise appreciation party where family friends gushed about how lucky I was to have such caring relatives. Each compliment felt like another nail in the coffin of our relationship. Mom started hinting about my future, saying things like, sometimes people need help managing big responsibilities, while Dad jovially mentioned how family takes care of family. I maintained my facade while finalizing my counterplan with my lawyer. We prepared restraining orders, fraud charges, and a civil suit. I also arranged for security cameras to be installed in my apartment, catching them attempting to enter while I was at work. The surprise appreciation party was Madison's masterstroke of manipulation. She'd rented the private room at my favorite restaurant, invited 20 of our mutual friends and family acquaintances, and presented it as a celebration of sisterhood. I just wanted everyone to know how amazing my sister is, she announced to the gathered crowd, raising a champagne glass. Doreen has been through so much this past year, and she's handled it all with such grace. Grace. There was that word again, loaded with subtext. Was I too graceful, not graceful enough? Every word was chosen for the audience, painting a picture of a woman who needed support, who was struggling despite appearances. Our cousin Jennifer pulled me aside during the party. "It's so wonderful that Madison organized this," she gushed. "She's been so worried about you. She told me you've been keeping to yourself lately, maybe working too much." I smiled and deflected, but inside, I seethed. Madison had been planting seeds with extended family, preparing them to nod along when news of my breakdown emerged. Everyone at this party was a potential witness to my family's loving concern. The gifts were particularly insidious. Madison presented me with a spa weekend package for stress relief. Mom gave me a subscription to a meditation app for mental clarity. And Dad offered to pay for a life coach to help navigate this challenging time. Each gift came with a card expressing their love and concern, perfect evidence of their attempts to help before taking more drastic measures. As the party wound down, Madison cornered me near the coat check. "I hope you know how much you mean to us," she said, her eyes actually misting with tears. "Whatever happens, remember we're always here for you." Whatever happens. The phrase hung between us like a threat. The next day, Mom's hints became less subtle. Over lunch at her kitchen table, she casually mentioned a news article about lottery winners who'd lost everything. "It's sad how sudden wealth can destroy people," she mused, stirring her tea. "They say most people aren't equipped to handle that kind of responsibility. The smart ones get help managing it." "Good thing I've got a financial advisor," I replied, keeping my voice light. Her spoon clinked against the china cup. "Oh, financial advisors can help with money, sure. But I mean real help. Decision-making support. Someone to make sure you're not taken advantage of." "Like family?" I asked innocently. "Exactly like family." Her smile was predatory. Dad's approach was different but equally transparent. He started dropping by my apartment unannounced, always with an excuse. He needed to borrow a tool. He was in the neighborhood. He brought me takeout because he worried I wasn't eating properly. Each visit was an inspection, his eyes cataloging my living space for signs of dysfunction. "Place looks good," he said during one visit, but his tone suggested disappointment. My apartment was clean, organized bills neatly filed on my desk, fresh flowers on the table. No evidence of the deterioration they needed. "Thanks, Dad. I've always been pretty organized." "Sometimes too organized," he said, forced laugh not reaching his eyes. "You know what they say about people who need everything perfect. It can be a sign of anxiety trying to control what you can when life feels chaotic." Everything had two meanings now. Organization was anxiety. Cleanliness was compulsion. Success was mania. Grief was depression. I existed in a hall of mirrors where nothing I did could be right. The security cameras I'd installed in my apartment proved invaluable 3 days before the dinner. I was at work when my phone alerted me to motion in my living room. I watched in real time as Madison let herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago for emergencies. She wasn't alone. A man I didn't recognize accompanied her, photographing my bookshelf, my medicine cabinet, my desk. I called Mr. Hartley immediately. Within an hour, we had the man identified as a private investigator who specialized in conservatorship cases. The footage showed them searching for evidence medications that might indicate mental illness, alcohol, that might suggest substance abuse, financial documents showing poor decisions. They found nothing because there was nothing to find, but the violation was complete. That evening, I changed my locks and had a security system installed. When Madison texted asking to come over, I told her I was getting the locks replaced because I'd lost my keys. "Oh no," she replied. "Do you need help? Losing things can be so stressful." Even my fictional key loss became evidence of cognitive decline. Mr. Hartley used the footage to strengthen our case. Breaking and entering, invasion of privacy, conspiracy to commit fraud. The charges were stacking up. We also discovered they'd been trying to access my medical records through various channels, calling my pharmacy to ask about prescriptions, even contacting my gynecologist's office, pretending to be me. 2 days before the dinner, I met with Dr. Winters for a follow-up evaluation. She was thorough, professional, and increasingly angry as I revealed more about my family's scheme. "This is exactly why legitimate mental health assessment gets a bad reputation," she said. "Your family is weaponizing psychiatry for financial gain." She wrote a supplementary report emphasizing not just my mental fitness, but the psychological harm being inflicted by my family's campaign. The subject is experiencing entirely appropriate stress responses to an orchestrated campaign of gaslighting and emotional manipulation, she wrote. Her ability to recognize and respond strategically to these threats demonstrates exceptional psychological resilience and clarity of thought. The night before the dinner, my preparation was complete. Legal documents were filed and ready. Security measures were in place. Evidence was backed up in multiple locations. I'd even practiced my responses, knowing that everything I said would be scrutinized and potentially twisted. I laid out my outfit for the dinner, a conservative blue dress that projected stability and professionalism. Nothing too bright that might suggest mania, nothing too dark that might indicate depression. Even my clothing choices had become strategic. As I tried to sleep, my phone lit up with texts from my family. Mom confirming I'd be there at 6 sharp. Madison asking if I needed a ride. Dad reminding me to bring my appetite because Mom was making all my favorites. The mundane messages of a loving family preparing for a dinner that would change everything. The morning of the dinner, I went through my normal routine, knowing it would be the last time I'd pretend everything was fine. Madison texted, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear something nice," with heart emojis. The irony wasn't lost on me. I chose my outfit carefully. Professional, but not too formal. Nothing they could point to as erratic behavior. I transferred all my valuables to a safety deposit box and gave my neighbor, a retired police officer, a heads up about potential drama. As I drove to my parents' house, I thought about all the genuine moments we'd shared over the years. Which memories were real? Had they ever truly loved me, or was I always just an obstacle to wealth? The morning started with a workout at my gym, maintaining the routine I'd established years ago. Exercise was my meditation, a way to center myself before battle. As I ran on the treadmill, I noticed another gym member watching me intently. Paranoia crept in. Had my family sent someone to observe me even here? Then I realized it was just someone waiting for the machine. The constant surveillance had made me suspicious of everyone. After my shower, I spent extra time on my appearance. Not too much makeup that might suggest trying too hard, but enough to look healthy and put together. I styled my hair in the same professional way I wore it to work, nothing fancy that might be interpreted as unusual behavior. Every choice was calculated to project normalcy. My phone buzzed constantly with family messages. Mom sent a grocery list photo showing all the ingredients for my favorite dishes. "Making your special dinner," she wrote with smiley faces. The performance of maternal love while planning my ambush turned my stomach. I stopped by my bank to check the safety deposit box one final time. Everything was secure. Grandma's original will documents, the USB drives with evidence backup copies of my psychiatric evaluation. The bank manager, who'd known me for years, chatted pleasantly about the weather. I wondered if he'd be shocked to learn that the composed woman in front of him was hours away from being ambushed by her own family. My neighbor Bill was a godsend. The retired officer had seen enough domestic situations to recognize trouble brewing. When I'd explained the situation earlier that week, his face had hardened. "Family can be the worst perps," he'd said. "They know exactly where to strike." He promised to be home that evening, ready to call for backup if needed. I spent the afternoon reviewing my evidence one last time with Mr. Hartley. We went over possible scenarios, my rights, how to handle various situations that might arise. "Remember," he said, "you don't have to stay if you feel threatened. The security team is on standby. One text and they'll extract you." Extract, like I was an agent in hostile territory, which I supposed I was. Madison called at 3 in the afternoon. "Hey sis, just wanted to check if you're coming tonight. Mom's going all out with the cooking." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "Perfect O and Doreen, I love you. I know I don't say it enough, but you mean the world to me." The false sentiment was nauseating. How could she say those words while planning to lock me away? How could any of them claim to love me while treating me like a problem to be solved? I dressed slowly, methodically. The blue dress was perfect. Knee-length, modest neckline, the kind of outfit I'd wear to a client meeting. I added simple pearl earrings Grandma Dorothy had given me for my college graduation. They felt like armor, her protection surrounding me even now. Before leaving my apartment, I did a final check. Security system armed, cameras recording, important documents secured, phone fully charged with Mr. Hartley on speed dial, recording app ready. I looked around my space, wondering if they'd try to claim I couldn't live independently. Everything was immaculate, organized, a testament to my capability. The drive to my parents' house took 23 minutes. I'd made this drive hundreds of times over the years for holidays, Sunday dinners, family celebrations. Each familiar turn held memories. The corner where Dad taught me to parallel park. The ice cream shop where Madison and I would stop after school. The park where Mom would take us to feed ducks. Were any of those memories untainted by their current betrayal? As I pulled into their driveway, I saw the familiar cars. Madison's silver SUV with the stick figure family on the back window. Dad's practical sedan. No unusual vehicles, but I knew Dr. Bradley would arrive later, probably after dessert when they'd spring their trap. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering strength. Through the dining room window, I could see them moving around, setting the table, the picture of domestic harmony. Mom appeared in the window, spotted my car, and waved enthusiastically. The smile on her face looked so genuine. If I didn't know better, I'd believe she was simply happy to see her daughter. Mr. Hartley's car was parked one street over, invisible but reassuring. My phone buzzed with his message, "We're here. You're not alone." I wasn't alone. I had truth on my side, evidence in my pocket, and legal protection waiting. My family had made their choice. Tonight, I would make mine. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the bottle of wine I'd brought as a prop and headed for the front door. My hands were steady as I rang the bell, even though my heart was racing. This was it. The final performance before the truth destroyed everything. Dinner started perfectly orchestrated. Mom served Grandma Dorothy's recipes, a calculated emotional manipulation. They showered me with compliments and inside jokes. Then came the test. Dad poured wine, watching eagerly as I took a sip. Madison kept steering conversation toward my work stress and asked repeatedly if I was feeling okay. The fake concern was suffocating. When Mom served dessert, my favorite chocolate cake, and said it was just like the ones Grandma used to make, something inside me snapped. That's when I set down my fork, looked at each of them, and delivered my line. The silence that followed was deafening. The moment I walked through the door, the performance began in earnest. Mom rushed to embrace me, holding me a beat too long as if measuring my response. "Doreen, you look wonderful. Doesn't she look wonderful, everyone?" The gathered family agreed enthusiastically. Too enthusiastically. Madison hugged me next, whispering, "I'm so glad you're here," with an intensity that suggested deeper meaning. Dad clapped me on the shoulder, studying my face as he asked about the drive over. Carl Madison's husband stood awkwardly by the fireplace. He'd never been comfortable with excessive family displays, and tonight he seemed particularly uneasy. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away. I wondered how much he knew about their plan. Come. Mom ushered me into the dining room. "Everything's almost ready. Your favorite, Grandma Dorothy's pot roast with those little potatoes you love." The dining room table was set with the good china, the ones we only used for holidays and special occasions. Fresh flowers adorned the center. Roses and baby's breath, Grandma's favorite combination. They'd thought of everything, creating a stage set designed to evoke emotion and nostalgia. Wine. Dad offered, already pouring. His hands seemed steady, but I caught the slight tremor as he filled my glass. He watched intently as I accepted it, taking a small sip. "It's good," I said. "The Malbec from Stone Creek. You remember?" He seemed genuinely pleased, then caught himself. Was remembering wines a sign of mental acuity or alcoholism in their narrative? He couldn't seem to decide. Madison launched into a story about her son's soccer team as we settled around the table. Normal family chatter filled the space, but underneath ran a current of tension. Every few minutes someone would direct a question my way, probing, testing. "How's work, sweetheart?" Mom asked while bringing in the salad. "Madison mentioned you've been putting in long hours." "It's busy but good. We just landed the Henderson Industries account." Henderson Industries. Dad's eyebrows rose. "That's a huge account. Must be stressful managing something that significant." "I have a great team." I deflected, recognizing the trap. Success could be mania. Stress could be breakdown. "Still," Madison interjected, "you have to take care of yourself. Remember what happened to Jennifer Marks. She pushed too hard at work and ended up having to take medical leave." Jennifer Marks, a former colleague, had suffered a legitimate nervous breakdown. The comparison was deliberate, planting seeds for later conversation about my own mental state. The meal progressed with excruciating false cheer. Mom had indeed made all my favorites, the pot roast so tender it fell apart, creamy mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, exactly how Grandma prepared them. Each dish was a manipulative reminder of better times designed to make me emotional vulnerable. "Remember when Grandma taught me this recipe?" Mom said, serving the meat. She said the secret was searing it just right. "Lock in the juices," she'd say. "I remember," I said, simply refusing to give them the emotional response they were fishing for. Madison tried another approach. "Speaking of Grandma, I had the strangest dream about her last night. Do you ever dream about her, Doreen? Sometimes grief can manifest in unusual ways." There it was. The invitation to admit to dreams, visions, anything they could twist into evidence of instability. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "I think that's normal when you miss someone." "Oh, absolutely," Madison agreed too quickly, though if the dreams are vivid or disturbing, it might help to talk to someone. The meal continued in this vein. Every topic led back to my mental state, my stress levels, my isolation, my grief. They were so focused on their agenda that they didn't notice my own performance, the steady hands, the measured responses, the calm demeanor that gave them nothing to work with. More wine, Dad offered for the third time despite my glass being still half full. I'm good, thanks. You sure it's Saturday night you can relax a little? The pressure to drink more was obvious. A drunk Doreen would be easier to paint as unstable. I took another tiny sip to appease him, but no more. As Mom cleared the dinner plates, Madison leaned across the table. You know, I was thinking about that time after your divorce when you stayed with us for a few days. Remember how you couldn't sleep? You were up at all hours pacing around. I remembered. I'd been heartbroken, betrayed my life upended. Of course I couldn't sleep. But in their retelling, insomnia became something sinister. That was a difficult time, I acknowledged. I'm grateful you were there for me. We're always here for you, she said, reaching for my hand. Always, no matter what. The dessert arrived with fanfare. Mom's triple chocolate cake, my favorite since childhood. She'd even used the vintage cake stand that had been Grandma's. I used Dorothy's recipe, she announced, as if I couldn't tell. She always said the best ingredients make the best cake. As she cut generous slices, passing the largest to me, something about the tableau struck me as unbearably false. The loving mother serving cake, the attentive father refilling water glasses, the concerned sister making small talk, all of them playing roles while planning my imprisonment. This is delicious, Mom, Madison said after her first bite. Just like Grandma's. Don't you think Doreen... I looked at the cake at my family at the performance we were all trapped in. The chocolate was rich and dark, exactly as I remembered, but it tasted like ash in my mouth. It's perfect, I said, setting down my fork. Just like everything tonight, the perfect family dinner. Something in my tone made them all pause. They exchanged quick glances, perhaps wondering if this was the moment I'd crack if their plan was working. Instead, I smiled at each of them in turn. My mother, who'd given me life and was now trying to steal it. My father, who'd taught me to ride a bike and was now trying to push me off a cliff. My sister, who'd shared my childhood and now wanted to steal my future. Actually, I said, my voice conversational, this whole evening has been perfect. The food, the wine, the conversation, even the subtle questions about my mental health disguised as concern. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Doreen, Mom started, but I held up my hand. No, let me finish. This performance tonight, and that's what it is, a performance, has been Oscar-worthy. The loving family gathering around poor, fragile Doreen. So much concern, so much care. I stood up slowly, deliberately maintaining eye contact with each of them. I'm done with all of you. I found the documents. I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The transfer papers, the psychiatric evaluation requests, the emails with Cousin Jake. Mom dropped her dessert fork. Madison's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Dad tried to recover first. Doreen, you're confused. Let us explain. I pulled out my phone, playing a recording of Mom's call to Dr. Harrison. Then Madison's email about me being fragile. Then Dad practicing his statement about my concerning behavior for the judge. But wait, I said, there's more. I revealed I knew about the commitment papers, the psychiatrist on standby, and their plan for that very evening. Dr. Bradley already left town, by the way. He didn't want to lose his license. The moment I dropped the first bombshell about finding the documents, the carefully maintained facade shattered. Mom's hand flew to her chest in a gesture of shock that might have been convincing if I hadn't seen her practice it in the mirror during one of my recorded visits. What documents, Doreen? What are you talking about? Her voice pitched high with feigned confusion. The ones in your closet, Mom, behind the photo albums, though I'm sure they've been moved by now. Dad's face flushed deep red, the vein in his temple throbbing. You went through our private things. Interesting, that's your first concern, Dad. Not denial, but anger that I found them. Madison tried a different tactic, tears already forming in her eyes. Doreen, you're scaring us. This paranoia, these accusations. Can't you see how concerning this is? I almost admired her commitment to the narrative. Even caught red-handed, she was trying to spin my discovery as evidence of mental illness. I pulled out my phone with deliberate calm. "Let me refresh your memory," I said, swiping to my recordings. Mom's voice filled the dining room, tinny but clear through the phone speaker. "Dr. Harrison. Yes, we'll need those records from last year for the documentation. My daughter has been showing signs of, well, we're very concerned." Mom's real face had gone pale beneath her makeup. "You recorded me. Every conversation for the past 3 weeks." I confirmed, swiping to the next file. Madison's voice replaced Mom's. "Jake, I need that professional opinion we discussed. Doreen's always been fragile, you know that. This is for her own good. She couldn't handle that kind of money. Remember to mention the isolation and mood swings." Madison stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "You had no right. Those were private conversations." "About me, planning to have me committed. I'd say I had every right." Carl finally spoke from his corner. "Madison, what is she talking about? What money?" So he hadn't known everything. Madison whirled on him. "Not now, Carl." But I wasn't done. The next recording was Dad practicing in his study when he thought he was alone. "Your Honor, my daughter has been displaying concerning behavior for months. As her father, it breaks my heart to bring this to your attention, but we fear for her safety and decision-making capacity." "Enough!" Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the china rattle. "You're taking things out of context." "Context." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Let me provide some context. Grandma Dorothy left me her entire estate, $3.2 million, and you all decided I was too fragile to handle it." The room erupted. Dad shouted about family loyalty and shared inheritance. Mom wailed about fairness and what Grandma would have wanted. Madison screamed accusations about favoritism and manipulation. Their masks hadn't just slipped. They'd been ripped away entirely. "Dr. Bradley was supposed to be here by now," I said conversationally, cutting through their noise. "Your tame psychiatrist who was going to declare me incompetent sight unseen. Did you know he's done this before 3 other families, 3 other inheritances?" Mom sank into her chair. "How do you know about Dr. Bradley?" "The same way I know about your meeting at Riverside Mental Health Facility. The same way I know about the judge you've been corresponding with. The same way I know about the commitment papers Dad has in his briefcase." Dad's hand moved involuntarily toward his briefcase by the sideboard. I smiled coldly. "Go ahead, check. They're still there. Page 3, paragraph 2 mentions my deteriorating hygiene and self-care. Interesting accusation given that I'm sitting here in a designer dress with professional hair and makeup." "This is insane," Madison muttered, then caught herself. "I mean, this is ridiculous." "Careful with your word choices, Madison. Wouldn't want anyone to think mental illness runs in the family." Carl stood up, his face a mask of confusion and growing anger. "Someone explain what's happening, now." Madison turned on him. "This doesn't concern you. My wife is apparently trying to have her sister committed to steal an inheritance, and it doesn't concern me." "It's not stealing," Madison shrieked. "That money should be all of ours." Grandma was confused at the end. She didn't know what she was doing. "Grandma was sharp until her last breath," I interjected, "which is why she saw this coming, why she protected me." "Protected you?" Dad's laugh was bitter. "She turned you against your own family." "No, Dad. Your greed did that. Your conspiracy did that. Your willingness to have me locked up did that." I pulled up another recording, this one from my security cameras. By the way, Madison, nice touch, bringing a private investigator to my apartment. Breaking and entering is still a crime, even with a spare key. The video played on my phone screen Madison and a strange man entering my apartment, photographing my belongings, searching through my things. The image quality was crystal clear, their faces unmistakable. "I was worried about you," Madison protested weakly. "So worried you needed to document my bookshelf, photograph my medicine cabinet, search my desk drawers." Mom found her voice again, trying one last manipulation. "Doreen, honey, we only wanted to help you. This money, it's too much responsibility. You're alone. You're vulnerable. People will take advantage of you. You mean like my family is trying to do? That's different. We love you. The word love hung in the air like a profanity. I looked at each of them, these people who claim to love me while plotting my destruction. Let me tell you what I know, I said, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. I know you've been planning this for 8 months. I know you're all drowning in debt. Dad's second mortgage, Madison's husband's failed business, Mom's depleted retirement account. I know you've been spending money you don't have banking on Grandma's death like vultures. Each accusation hit like a physical blow. They couldn't deny it. I had too much evidence. I know you contacted my therapist from the divorce trying to get records to use against me. I know you've been documenting every glass of wine I drink, every tear I shed, every normal human emotion I display. I know about the lawyer at Preston Law Firm who specializes in these kinds of financial guardianships. I stood straighter, feeling the power of truth. But here's what you don't know. Dr. Bradley didn't leave town because he suddenly grew a conscience. He left because my lawyer contacted him about his previous schemes. The judge you've been corresponding with, she's been notified about your fraudulent petition. The psychiatrist you thought would evaluate me tomorrow, she's already evaluated me and found me completely competent. The silence was complete. Even Carl had stopped demanding answers, understanding dawning on his face. You made one crucial mistake, I continued. You underestimated me. The fragile sister, the emotional daughter. You were so busy documenting my supposed instability that you never noticed I was documenting your conspiracy. I placed my phone on the table, its screen still glowing with evidence. Every email, every meeting, every conversation, all recorded, all backed up, all in the hands of my legal team. Dad's voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. Your legal team? Oh yes. Did you really think I'd face this alone? Samuel Hartley from Hartley & Associates? Grandma Dorothy's real lawyer. He's parked outside right now along with a process server. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Hartley. Ready when you are. I smiled, but it felt like shattered glass. So here's what's going to happen next. The room exploded. Dad stood up, face red, shouting about doing this for my own good. Madison cried crocodile tears, claiming she was protecting me from gold diggers and bad decisions. Mom, the master manipulator, tried a different approach. Doreen, honey, you're proving our point. This paranoia, these recordings. Don't you see you need help? I laughed, actually laughed. Gaslighting me even now, bold choice. They scrambled for control. Dad threatened to call the police, saying I was having a breakdown. Madison tried to grab my phone. Mom attempted to block the door, but I was prepared. My lawyer is parked outside, I announced, along with a process server. And yes, I'm recording everything for evidence. Dad's shouting reached a crescendo that probably carried to the neighbors. You ungrateful child, after everything we've done for you. We fed you, clothed, you put you through college, and this is how you repay us. You did what parents are supposed to do, I shot back. You don't get a medal for basic parenting, and it doesn't give you the right to steal from me 32 years later. Madison's tears were flowing freely now, mascara creating dark rivers down her cheeks, but her eyes, those calculating eyes, remained sharp and desperate. You don't understand what you're doing, Doreen. That money will destroy you. Look at what it's already done. You're paranoid. You're recording your family. You're hiring lawyers against us. I'm protecting myself from criminals who happen to share my DNA. Criminals! Mom's voice rose to a shriek. How dare you? We're your family. Family doesn't drug each other's wine, I said, pointedly glancing at my barely touched glass. Oh, did you think I didn't notice Dad's eagerness to keep refilling my glass, or the way you all watched every sip I took? Carl stepped forward, his face a mixture of disgust and disbelief. Madison, did you put something in her drink? Of course not. Madison whirled on her husband. Just shut up, Carl. You don't understand anything. I understand my wife is trying to steal millions from her sister, Carl shot back. I understand you've been lying to me about why we needed that loan last month." Their marriage imploding was collateral damage I hadn't anticipated, but couldn't bring myself to regret. Madison had involved him in her crimes, whether he knew it or not. Dad made a move toward his briefcase, probably for his phone. I stepped between him and his goal. "Calling the police." "Please do. I'm sure they'll be very interested in the breaking and entering the conspiracy to commit fraud, the attempted false imprisonment." "False imprisonment," Dad sputtered. "You're delusional. Am I what else would you call having me involuntarily committed based on fabricated evidence? Kidnapping might be more accurate, actually." Mom tried her manipulation one more time, modulating her voice to motherly concern. "Doreen, sweetheart, you're not well. These accusations, this paranoid behavior, can't you see how this looks? You're having some kind of episode. Let us help you." The gaslighting was so transparent, it was almost insulting. "An episode? You mean like a moment of clarity, because that's what I'm having, Mom. Perfect clarity about who you really are. You're twisting everything." Madison made a lunge for my phone on the table. I was faster snatching it up before she could reach it. "Careful, Madison. Assault won't look good added to your other charges." "Charges?" Her voice cracked. "You're going to have us arrested, your own family. You were going to have me institutionalized, your own sister." The parallel hung heavy in the air. Dad's face had gone from red to an alarming purple. "You can't prove anything. Those documents could be about anyone. The recordings could be edited. No judge will take your word over your entire families." I smiled coldly. "Want to bet because I have security footage of Madison and her investigator breaking into my apartment. I have emails from your account to Preston Law Firm discussing my case. I have bank records showing mysterious deposits into Dr. Bradley's account from a shell company Dad set up. Oh yes, I found that too." Dad staggered back as if I'd physically struck him. The shell company had been his clever touch, a way to pay off the psychiatrist without direct connection. But Robert Chen, my investigator, had been thorough. "More importantly," I continued, "I have Grandma Dorothy on video explaining exactly why she left everything to me and what she expected you might do." "That's impossible," Mom whispered. "She didn't. She wouldn't." "She knew you better than you thought, all of you. She saw your greed, your entitlement, your jealousy, and she protected me from beyond the grave." Madison made another attempt at emotional manipulation, switching from tears to righteous anger. "You turned her against us. You poisoned her mind while she was sick and vulnerable. I was working 60 hours a week while Grandma was sick. You know who spent every day with her, you, Madison. You're the one who had access opportunity motive. But she saw through you." "Shut up," Madison screamed. "Just shut up. You always thought you were better than us. Always had to be the perfect one, the successful one, the one Grandma loved most." There it was, the truth finally spilling out like poison from a lanced wound. This wasn't about protecting me from money I couldn't handle. This was about jealousy, resentment, years of perceived slights, and imagined favoritism. "I never thought I was better than you," I said quietly. "I just tried to live my life with integrity, something you clearly know nothing about." Mom moved toward the door, but I held up my hand. "I wouldn't leave just yet. We're not done here." "You can't keep us prisoner in our own home," Dad blustered. "I'm not keeping you anywhere, but if you leave now, you'll miss the best part, the part where I tell you exactly what happens next. We're calling our lawyer," Mom threatened, reaching for her purse. "William Preston. Good luck with that. He's about to be very busy with the State Bar Ethics Committee. Turns out he's been involved in quite a few shady conservatorships. You really need to vet your co-conspirators better." The depth of my preparation was finally sinking in. They'd thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. In reality, I'd been playing three-dimensional chess while they were still learning which way the pieces moved. Carl found his voice again. "Madison, I want a divorce." "What?" She spun to face him, tears starting fresh. "You can't be serious. This is just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding? You tried to rob your sister and have her committed." What part am I misunderstanding? It's not like that. The money was supposed to help us, help our family, your restaurant. I never asked you to steal for me, Carl said with quiet dignity. I never would have wanted money that came from destroying Doreen. Their domestic drama was interrupted by a knock at the door. Everyone froze. That would be my lawyer, I said conversationally. Shall I let him in, or would you prefer to do the honors? It is still your house. For now. The threat was subtle, but clear. Their house mortgaged to the hilt, built on a foundation of debt and greed. How long would they keep it once the legal bills started piling up? Dad moved toward the door like a man walking to his execution. Through the frosted glass, we could see two figures, Mr. Hartley's distinguished silhouette and another man in a courier uniform. Before you open that door, I said, you should know I'm offering you one chance, one opportunity to minimize the damage, but it comes with conditions. They all turned to me, hope and suspicion warring on their faces. What conditions? Mom asked warily. I smiled, but it held no warmth. Complete confession, written statements acknowledging everything you've done, agreements to cease all contact with me, and psychiatric evaluation for all of you, because clearly you're the ones who need help. That's blackmail, Dad protested. No, that's mercy. The alternative is criminal prosecution, civil lawsuits, and public humiliation. Your choice. The knock came again, more insistent. Mr. Hartley's voice carried through the door. Ms. Brooks, is everything all right? I looked at my family, these people who had chosen greed over love, manipulation over honesty. What's it going to be? Door number 1, confession and consequences. Door number 2, complete destruction. You have 30 seconds to decide. The room held its breath as 3 generations of betrayal came to a head. Madison looked at Carl's retreating back. Mom clutched Dad's arm, and Dad stared at the door as if it might spontaneously combust. 20 seconds, I counted down. 15, 10. Wait, Mom cried out. Just wait. Madison broke first. You don't deserve that money, she screamed. I'm the one who stayed close to Grandma. I'm the one who visited every week while you were off living your life. The mask finally slipped. Dad added, do you know what we sacrificed? We've been planning our retirement on that inheritance. Your grandmother promised. Mom's tears turned real. That money was supposed to be split equally. She changed her will without telling us. The truth poured out like poison. They'd been living beyond their means, taking loans against expected inheritance. Madison had promised her husband they'd have money for his failing business. They'd all spent money they didn't have yet banking on Grandma's death. The greed was naked and ugly. Madison's explosion was volcanic years of resentment erupting in a stream of bitter accusations. Every single week, Doreen. Every week I drove 45 minutes each way to sit with her. I listened to her stories about the good old days for the 1,000th time. I helped her with her medications. I cleaned her kitchen. Where were you? Working, I said simply. Building the career that Grandma encouraged me to pursue. Living the independent life she wanted for me. Independent. Madison spat the word like a curse. You mean selfish. You swooped in for Sunday dinners and holidays, played the perfect granddaughter for a few hours, then disappeared back to your precious life. Is that what this is about? You think you earned her money by putting in time like it was a punch clock? I earned it by being there. Madison's voice cracked with genuine emotion for the first time all evening. I held her hand through chemo. I drove her to every appointment. I slept in that uncomfortable hospital chair for weeks, and for what? So she could leave everything to her absent granddaughter. Dad couldn't contain himself any longer. Your grandmother made promises, he said, his voice thick with bitterness. When we took out the second mortgage, she said not to worry, said we'd be taken care of. We refinanced based on that promise. You refinanced based on greed, I corrected. Grandma never promised you her money. You assumed. She was our mother. Dad slammed his fist on the table again. 40 years of taking care of her being good children, and she cuts us out completely. She didn't cut you out. She left you each $50,000. That's not nothing. 50,000. Mom laughed bitterly, mascara-streaked face twisted with disdain. Do you know what we owe the second mortgage, the credit cards, the loans we took out expecting fairness? Fairness. I stood up, my own anger finally breaking through. You want to talk about fairness? How fair is it to plot against your own daughter? How fair is it to try to have me declared insane? We weren't trying to declare you insane, Mom protested weakly, just incapable of managing that much money. Based on what my successful career, my stable life, my ability to process grief like a normal human being. You don't understand what that kind of money does to people, Dad insisted. It changes them, corrupts them. We were protecting you. You were protecting yourselves from bankruptcy. Carl, who had been standing by the doorway, spoke up again. Madison, is this true? Did you promise them money from Doreen's inheritance? Madison whirled on him again. What was I supposed to do? Watch your restaurant fail, lose our house. Our children's college funds are gone. Carl gone. So you decided to steal your sister's future to pay for our mistakes. It wasn't stealing. That money should have been divided equally. $3.2 million, and she gets all of it. How is that fair? Because Grandma earned it, I said quietly. Every penny came from Grandpa's life insurance and their joint investments. She scrimped and saved for 50 years, lived modestly, invested wisely. That money represents her entire life's work, and she had the right to leave it to whoever she chose. She chose wrong, Madison said flatly. Why? Because she saw through you, because she knew exactly what you'd do if she split it evenly. Mom suddenly burst into genuine tears, the manipulative facade crumbling entirely. We're ruined, she sobbed. Don't you understand? We're completely ruined. The house is leveraged to the maximum. We owe $90,000 in credit card debt. Your father's retirement is gone. We were counting on that money. You were counting on Grandma dying, I said, the words tasting like acid. She was 87 years old, Dad protested. It's not like we wished her dead, but we made reasonable financial projections based on life expectancy. Reasonable. You spent money that wasn't yours based on hopes that your mother would die on schedule. There's nothing reasonable about that. Madison sank into her chair, the fight suddenly draining out of her. Do you know what it's like? She asked, voice small and broken, to watch you succeed at everything. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life. Even your divorce was perfect. You came out stronger, and I'm drowning. My husband's business is failing. My kids think I'm a failure. And then Grandma, the one person who I thought saw my worth, leaves me $50,000 like I'm some distant cousin. The pain in her voice was real, and for a moment I felt a flicker of the sisterly sympathy that had once defined our relationship. But then I remembered the folder, the meetings, the conspiracy to destroy me. So you decided to destroy me instead. Not destroy, Mom interjected. Just manage things. Make sure the money was used responsibly, for the family. By having me committed. It was supposed to be temporary, Dad said, as if that made it better. Just long enough to establish conservatorship. Then you could have gone back to your normal life. My normal life with my sister controlling my money, my family thinking I'm mentally incompetent, my career destroyed. That normal life. We would have made sure you were comfortable, Madison said weakly. In a cage of your making. The room fell silent except for Mom's continued sobbing. The magnitude of their betrayal, their complete moral bankruptcy, lay exposed like a festering wound. They'd convinced themselves that their greed was love, their conspiracy was care, their betrayal was protection. Mr. Hartley knocked again, more insistently. Ms. Brooks, I'm growing concerned. If you don't respond, I'll be forced to call the authorities. I'm fine, Mr. Hartley, I called out. Give me 5 more minutes. I looked around the table at the ruins of my family. Dad's purple face had faded to gray defeat. Mom's perfect makeup was destroyed, revealing the desperate woman beneath. Madison stared at her manicured nails as if they held answers. Carl had already mentally left the marriage, the house, the entire toxic situation. "Here's what I don't understand," I said finally. "If you were in such dire financial straits, why didn't you just ask for help? Why didn't you come to me after Grandma died and explain the situation? Ask you for money." Dad's pride flared briefly. "Beg from our own daughter. But stealing from her is better." "Would you have given us $3 million? Madison asked bitterly. "No," I admitted. "But I might have helped with the debts, might have worked out payment plans, might have found ways to help that didn't involve destroying our family." "Our family was already destroyed," Mom said quietly, the moment she changed her will. "No, Mom, our family was destroyed the moment you chose money over me. Grandma's will just revealed who you really are." The knock at the door became a steady pounding. "Ms. Brooks, I'm calling the police if you don't respond immediately." "The police are already on their way," I said, standing up. "I texted them 10 minutes ago." The color drained from all three faces simultaneously. "You called the police on your own family," Mom whispered. "No. You called them on yourselves the moment you committed breaking and entering, fraud and conspiracy. I'm just making sure justice is served." I walked to the door with steady steps, my heart breaking with each one. Behind me, I heard Dad scramble for his phone. Madison's renewed sobs, Mom's voice rising in panic, but I didn't turn back. Some bridges once burned light the way forward. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, pulling out the legal documents my lawyer had prepared. "You're going to sign these papers acknowledging your attempt to defraud me. You're going to return the items you've already stolen from Grandma's house. Yes, I have inventory lists. And you're going to stay away from me." They protested, threatened, begged. Dad mentioned family loyalty. Madison sobbed about her children's futures. Mom tried one last manipulation about breaking Grandma's heart. That's when I played my trump card, Grandma Dorothy's video will. On my phone screen, my grandmother's face appeared looking directly at the camera. "If you're watching this, Doreen, it means they tried to take what I left you. I knew they would. Your family's greed has always worried me." I opened the door to find Mr. Hartley standing there with 2 uniformed police officers and the process server. His expression was professionally neutral, but I saw concern in his eyes as he took in my composed exterior. "Ms. Brooks, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Mr. Hartley. Please come in, officers." The entrance of law enforcement changed the dynamic instantly. Dad stepped back from the table, hands visible, his business instincts kicking in. Mom's sobs quieted to whimpers. Madison looked like she might faint. "These are the individuals." One officer, whose badge read Martinez, consulted his notebook. "Madison Walsh, Robert Brooks, and Patricia Brooks." "That's correct," I confirmed. "There's evidence of breaking and entering conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted false imprisonment." "Those are serious allegations," Officer Martinez said, his eyes scanning the room, taking in the emotional devastation. "I have documentation," Mr. Hartley interjected smoothly, producing a folder. "Security footage, email correspondence, financial records. We've prepared a comprehensive brief for your review." Carl stepped forward. "Officers, I'm Carl Walsh. I just learned about this tonight. I had no knowledge of my wife's activities." Madison shot him a look of pure betrayal. "Carl—" "Ma'am will need to speak with everyone separately," the second officer, Thompson, said. "But first, Ms. Brooks mentioned some documents." I held up the legal papers I'd pulled from my bag. "Confession agreements. I was offering them the opportunity to admit their crimes in exchange for lesser consequences." "You can't make us sign anything," Dad protested, finding his voice. "We have rights. We want our lawyer." "By all means, call William Preston," I said. "Though he's probably busy dealing with his own legal troubles. Did you know conspiracy to commit fraud can result in disbarment?" Mr. Hartley cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should show them the video before they make any decisions about representation." I nodded, pulling up Grandma Dorothy's video will on my phone and casting it to the smart TV on the wall. The room fell silent as my grandmother's face filled the screen larger than life. "My dearest Doreen." Her voice was strong despite her frail appearance. "If you're watching this, it means they tried to take what I left you. I knew they would. Your family's greed has always worried me." Mom gasped. Madison covered her face. Dad stood frozen, watching his mother speak from beyond the grave. "I've watched my children for years," Grandma continued. "Watched them calculate my worth while checking my pulse. Robert, my son you, started asking about my will the day after your father died. Patricia, you've been mentally spending money that wasn't yours since you married him. And Madison, my granddaughter, you visited me every week not out of love, but to ensure you weren't forgotten in the will." "That's not true," Madison cried out to the screen. But Grandma wasn't finished. "I know about the loans you've taken out. I know about the debt you've hidden. I know you see me as a bank account, not a mother or grandmother. That's why I'm leaving everything to Doreen. Not because I love her more, but because she loves me, for me, not my money." The video continued with specific examples, conversations Grandma had overheard, financial documents. She'd discovered behaviors she'd observed. It was devastating in its accuracy and detail. "I've instructed my attorney to protect Doreen from any attempts to challenge this will or harm her in any way. If you're watching this, it means you've already tried. I'm disappointed, but not surprised." She turned her attention directly to the camera as if speaking to me. "Doreen, don't let them make you feel guilty. They've made their choices. Use the money to build a good life, help others be the person I know you are. And remember, family isn't about blood. It's about love, respect, and integrity." The video had more legal details, but I paused it there. The room was tomb silent, except for Mom's renewed tears. "She knew," Dad said hollowly. "All this time, she knew what we were thinking." "Apparently so," Mr. Hartley said. "She also took precautions. The will is ironclad. Any attempt to challenge it triggers the nuclear clause she mentioned earlier. All personal effects, photos, heirlooms. Everything gets liquidated and donated to charity." "She wouldn't," Mom whispered. "She would, and she did," I said. "She protected me even knowing it would hurt you. That's how much your greed disappointed her." Officer Martinez had been taking notes throughout. "This video certainly provides context, but we still need to address the current legal issues, the breaking and entering, the fraud allegations." I turned to my family. "This is your last chance. Sign the confessions, acknowledge what you did, accept the restraining orders, get help for whatever drove you to this, or face the full legal consequences." "What about our debts?" Madison asked desperately. "What about my children, their college funds?" "That's no longer my problem. You made it not my problem when you tried to have me committed." "Doreen, please." Mom reached out to me. "We're still your family. Despite everything, we're still family." "No," I said firmly. "Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't plot and scheme and betray. You're just people I happen to share DNA with." Mr. Hartley produced 3 sets of documents. The confession agreements are straightforward. You acknowledge your actions, agree to cease all contact with Ms. Brooks, and undergo mandatory counseling. In exchange, Ms. Brooks won't pursue criminal charges, though she reserves the right to civil action if you violate the agreement. "This is extortion," Dad said weakly. "This is mercy," Mr. Hartley corrected. "Prison would be far worse than what's being offered here." Carl spoke up again. "Madison, sign it, for our kids' sake, if nothing else. Do you want them visiting you in prison?" "Prison?" Madison's voice was faint. "They wouldn't really send us to prison, would they?" Officer Thompson spoke for the first time. "Fraud involving amounts over $1 million is a federal crime. The attempted false imprisonment adds significant charges. If convicted, you're looking at substantial time." The reality was finally sinking in. Their perfect crime had become their perfect nightmare. "Can we sign?" Dad said slowly. What happens to us financially? You deal with your debts the way everyone else does, I said. Bankruptcy payment plans, selling assets, without my money padding your accounts. We'll lose everything, Mom said. You already lost everything that mattered when you chose greed over love. Madison suddenly lunged for the papers, grabbing a pen. Fine, I'll sign your stupid confession. But know this, Doreen, you're destroying your own family. No, Madison, you destroyed our family. I'm just refusing to be a victim. She signed with angry slashes. Carl immediately took the pen from her, adding his witness signature. One by one, they all signed. Dad's hand shook as he wrote his name. Mom cried through her signature, but they all signed. Mr. Hartley collected the documents, reviewing them carefully. These appear to be in order. Officers, I believe we can handle the rest civilly now. Officer Martinez nodded. We'll file a report. Ms. Brooks, if you feel threatened at any point, call immediately. These restraining orders go into effect immediately. As the officers prepared to leave, I remembered one more thing. Oh, and the items from Grandma's house. I want them returned within 48 hours. All of them. What items? Mom asked, though her guilty expression suggested she knew exactly what I meant. The jewelry you took the day after the funeral, the first edition books, the photo albums, the silver, all of it. Madison's face flushed. Those were gifts. Those were theft. Grandma's will specified all personal items came to me first for distribution. You took them before the will was even read. We'll return everything, Carl said firmly. I'll make sure of it. The process server stepped forward, handing each of them official court documents. You're being served with restraining orders. 500 feet distance from Ms. Brooks at all times. No contact through third parties. Violation results in immediate arrest. My family, former family, stood there holding their papers like lost children. The dining room that had hosted so many family gatherings now felt like a courtroom where justice had finally been served. Is there anything else you'd like to say to them? Mr. Hartley asked me quietly. I looked at each of them one last time. My parents who had raised me and then tried to cage me. My sister who had shared my childhood and then tried to steal my future. They looked smaller, somehow diminished by their own choices. I hope you get help, I said finally. Real help. Not for me, but for yourselves. Because whatever drove you to this is going to destroy you if you don't address it. The video will was explicit. Grandma had documented her concerns about the family's financial irresponsibility and specifically stated that any attempt to contest or manipulate the inheritance would result in them getting nothing, not even sentimental items. She'd known. She'd protected me from beyond the grave. My family's faces crumbled. The process server entered delivering lawsuit papers for attempted fraud, defamation, and conspiracy. I also revealed that their family friend attorney was being investigated for ethics violations. The house of cards collapsed. Madison's husband, who'd been listening from the kitchen, came out announcing he wanted a divorce. He hadn't known about the scheme. Dad received a call from his employer about the misuse of company resources for personal legal matters. Mom's society friends had already been informed about the scandal. The process server, a young man who'd clearly seen his share of family drama, handed over the papers with professional efficiency. Each document was another nail in the coffin of their conspiracy. Restraining orders, cease and desist notices, civil lawsuit documentation. The weight of legal consequences made their shoulders sag with each new paper. Carl's announcement of divorce cut through the legal proceedings like a scalpel. I can't do this anymore, Madison. I thought I knew you, but the woman I married wouldn't have done this. Carl, please. Madison reached for him, but he stepped back. We can work through this. It was a mistake. A mistake you planned for months to have your sister institutionalized. You broke into her home. You tried to steal millions of dollars. That's not a mistake, that's a crime spree. I did it for us, for our family. You did it for greed, and you've destroyed our family in the process. He turned to me, his expression pained. Doreen, I'm sorry. I should have seen the signs, should have questioned where she was going, what she was doing. This isn't your fault, Carl, I said, meaning it. He'd been as much a victim of Madison's deception as I had. Dad's phone rang, shattering the moment. He looked at the caller ID and paled. It's Harris. Harris was his boss at the accounting firm where Dad had worked for 25 years. With shaking hands, he answered. We could only hear his side of the conversation, but it was enough. Yes, sir, I understand. No, yes, I know the company policy, but Monday, yes, sir. He hung up, aging 10 years in 30 seconds. They know about the company computer being used for personal legal matters, the emails to Preston Law, the research on conservatorship laws during business hours. I'm suspended pending investigation. Robert, Mom gasped. Your job is gone, Dad finished hollowly. 25 years and it's gone. The dominoes were falling faster now. Mom's phone buzzed with text after text. She read them with growing horror. The garden club knows, the library board, the women's auxiliary. They're asking me to step down from my positions. How? Madison demanded. How do they know already? Mr. Hartley cleared his throat. Public records, Mrs. Walsh. Restraining orders are public documents. The civil lawsuit will be public knowledge by morning. In a town this size, news travels fast. You've ruined us. Mom turned on me with venom. Your own family and you've ruined us. You ruined yourselves the moment you decided I was worth more as a paycheck than a daughter. Madison's phone was ringing now. She looked at it with dread. It's the PTA president. I'm supposed to run the spring fundraiser. She didn't answer. We all knew what that call was about. In small communities, reputation was everything. Their elaborate scheme had cost them not just money, but their social standing, their careers, their marriages. The items from Grandma's house, I reminded them, 48 hours. How are we supposed to do that with restraining orders? Dad asked bitterly. Carl can serve as intermediary, Mr. Hartley suggested. He's not named in the orders. Carl nodded. I'll handle it. Make an inventory. Return everything. Even the ring, Madison asked plaintively. Grandma's engagement ring. She said I could have it. She said that before she knew you were plotting against me, I replied. Everything comes back. Officer Martinez, who had been observing quietly, finally spoke. I think we're done here. Mr. Hartley, Ms. Brooks will be in touch if we need anything else. As the officers left, the reality of the situation seemed to fully hit my family. They weren't just losing the inheritance they'd counted on. They were losing everything they'd built their lives around. Where will we go? Mom asked no one in particular. With the second mortgage, we can't afford the house. Robert's lost his job. Our friends won't speak to us. Maybe you should have thought of that before you tried to have me committed, I said, exhaustion finally creeping into my voice. Madison turned to Carl one more time. The kids. What do we tell the kids? The truth, Carl said firmly, that their mother made terrible choices and now has to face the consequences. Maybe they'll learn what not to do. You're taking them from me. I'm protecting them from this toxicity. My lawyer will be in touch. As Carl left, Madison collapsed into a chair, the fight completely drained from her. The family that had sat down to dinner just hours ago was completely shattered. Mr. Hartley touched my elbow gently. Ms. Brooks, I think it's time we left. I nodded, gathering my things. As I headed for the door, Mom called out one last time. Doreen, wait, please. I paused but didn't turn around. What are we supposed to do now? How do we survive this? I did turn then, looking at the three people who had been my whole world once. The same way I would have had to survive if your plan had worked. Figure it out. Get help. Take responsibility. But do it without me. You'll regret this, Dad said, finding one last reserve of paternal authority. One day when you're alone with all that money, you'll regret pushing away your family. No, Dad. I'll regret that I had to. I'll regret that you chose greed over love, but I'll never regret protecting myself from people who would destroy me for money. I walked out of my childhood home for the last time, Mr. Hartley beside me. Behind us, the sound of Mom's sobs and Madison's angry voice faded into the night. In the driveway, several neighbors had gathered, drawn by the police cars and drama. Their stares followed us, but I kept my head high. "You did well in there," Mr. Hartley said as we reached his car. "Many people would have caved to the emotional manipulation." "They're not my family anymore," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "They made that choice when they decided I was worth more dead than alive to them." "Not dead," he corrected gently. "Institutionalized." Same difference. The Doreen they knew, the daughter and sister who trusted them, who loved them unconditionally. She's dead. They killed her with their greed. As we drove away, I didn't look back. Behind us, the house that had once been home was now just a crime scene. The family that had once been everything was now just a cautionary tale about how money can corrupt even the strongest bonds. But I was free. Grandma Dorothy had made sure of that. Her final gift wasn't just the money. It was the revelation of who my family really was and the strength to walk away from them. The next few days would bring more revelations. The full extent of their debt, over $300,000. The investigation that revealed Dad had been skimming from client accounts, small amounts he'd planned to replace with the inheritance. Madison's credit card fraud using my Social Security number to open accounts. Mom's gambling addiction that had drained their retirement. Each discovery was another confirmation that I'd made the right choice. They hadn't just been planning to steal my inheritance. They'd been stealing from everyone around them, living lies within lies, constructing elaborate facades to hide their greed and desperation. The local newspaper picked up the story. "Family fraud scheme unravels." The article was careful to avoid libel, but the facts were damning enough. Within a week, Dad's termination from the accounting firm was official. Mom's social positions evaporated. Madison's husband filed for divorce and full custody. They'd wanted Grandma's money to maintain their illusions. Instead, losing it had exposed every ugly truth they'd been hiding. I left that house for the last time feeling simultaneously heartbroken and liberated. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Faced with overwhelming evidence, my family settled out of court. They were required to attend therapy for their actions, pay my legal fees, and maintain a 500-foot distance from me. I donated a portion of my inheritance to mental health charities in Grandma's name. A pointed message about their weaponization of mental health. Madison's marriage ended, and she had to sell her house. Dad took early retirement in disgrace. Mom lost her position on various charity boards. But the most surprising outcome, 6 months later, I received a letter from my teenage cousin, Sarah Madison's daughter, thanking me for exposing the truth about her parents' greed and manipulation. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of legal procedures and emotional processing. Mr. Hartley proved invaluable, guiding me through each step with professional competence and unexpected kindness. The settlement negotiations were swift. Faced with criminal prosecution and mounting evidence, my family had little choice but to accept the terms. The therapy requirement was non-negotiable. Dr. Sarah Winters, who had evaluated me, recommended a colleague who specialized in family dysfunction and financial crimes. "They need to understand what drove them to this," she explained. "Otherwise, they'll just find new victims." The restraining orders went into effect immediately. 500 feet meant they couldn't shop at our usual grocery store. If I was there, couldn't attend community events. If I was present, couldn't even drive past my apartment building. The invisible barriers were more effective than any physical walls. Paying my legal fees added insult to injury for them. The bill was substantial. Mr. Hartley's firm didn't come cheap, and the private investigator's services had been extensive. It would take them years to pay it off, a constant reminder of their failed scheme. I found a new apartment across town, a fresh start, in a space untainted by their attempts to invade my privacy. The building had excellent security, a necessity now that I understood how far family could fall. As I unpacked boxes in my new home, I felt the strange duality of grief and relief. Grief for the family I'd thought I had relief at escaping the family they actually were. The decision to donate to mental health charities came easily. I established the Dorothy Brooks Foundation for Mental Health Advocacy, focusing on protecting vulnerable individuals from financial exploitation disguised as caregiving. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. My family had tried to use mental health as a weapon, and now I was using my inheritance to shield others from similar abuse. The first donation went to an organization that educated families about conservatorship abuse. The second funded legal aid for people fighting involuntary commitments. The third supported research into financial exploitation of the elderly and mentally ill. Each check I wrote felt like a small victory for Grandma and her values. Madison's divorce proceeded rapidly. Carl, freed from the web of deception, proved to be a formidable opponent in court. The breaking and entering charge, the conspiracy evidence, and her financial fraud made custody a foregone conclusion. She lost the house, the kids, and any claim to respectability. I heard through the grapevine that she'd moved in with our parents, 3 failures huddled together in their mortgaged house. The irony of her dependence on them while they faced their own financial ruin was poetic justice. Dad's disgrace was more public. The accounting firm's investigation revealed not just misuse of resources, but actual embezzlement. Small amounts over years, always planning to pay it back when Mom's inheritance came through. He avoided jail time by agreeing to restitution, but his professional reputation was destroyed. 25 years of building a career gone in a matter of weeks. His early retirement came with no party, no gold watch, no well wishes from colleagues, just a box of personal items and a lifetime ban from the profession he'd devoted himself to. The man who'd lectured me about responsibility had lost everything through his own irresponsibility. Mom's social fall was perhaps the most complete. In a small town, social standing was currency, and she'd spent all of hers. The garden club presidency she'd held for 15 years was stripped away. The library board position she'd used to feel important dissolved. The women's auxiliary she'd helped found asked her to resign. She became a ghost in her own community, avoided at the grocery store, whispered about at the coffee shop. The woman who'd built her identity on appearances now had nowhere to appear. But 6 months into this new reality, something unexpected arrived in my mailbox. A letter addressed in careful teenage handwriting. Sarah Walsh, Madison's eldest daughter, my 16-year-old cousin. Dear Aunt Doreen. It began. I hope it's okay that I'm writing to you. I know there's a restraining order, but Mom says it doesn't apply to me, and Dad says I should follow my conscience. The letter continued, each word carefully chosen. I wanted to thank you for exposing the truth. I know that sounds weird, thanking someone for destroying my family, but you didn't destroy it. You revealed what was already broken. She went on to describe the toxic environment she'd grown up in, the constant focus on money, the jealousy directed at me, the lessons in greed disguised as family loyalty. Mom used to say you thought you were better than us. Now I understand you just were better. You worked for what you had while they waited for someone else to die. The maturity in her words was heartbreaking. At 16, she understood truths that her parents at 40 couldn't grasp. She told me about starting therapy, about her younger brother's confusion, about living with her father, and trying to build a life based on integrity instead of greed. I'm getting a job this summer, she wrote. Dad says I don't have to, but I want to know what it feels like to earn something instead of expecting it. Maybe someday when the restraining order is done, we could have coffee. I'd like to know the aunt my mother was so jealous of. I cried reading that letter. Cried for the relationship we'd lost, for the children caught in their parents' web of greed, for the young woman finding her way through the wreckage. I wrote back immediately telling her how proud I was, how welcome she'd be in my life when legally possible, how her grandmother Dorothy would have loved her strength. That letter marked a turning point. I'd been so focused on what I'd lost that I hadn't considered what might be gained. Sarah represented hope, that the next generation could learn from their parents' mistakes, that greed wasn't genetic, that integrity could bloom even in toxic soil. I threw myself into the foundation work, finding purpose in protecting others. We funded educational programs about financial elder abuse. We supported legal clinics that helped families navigate conservatorship laws ethically. We created resources for people like me who discovered their families valued money over relationship. The work was healing. Each person we helped felt like a small redemption. Grandma's money, which had revealed the worst in her children, was now revealing the best in strangers. Her legacy became not the greed she'd exposed, but the good that came from that exposure. 3 months after the confrontation, I received notice that my family had completed their first phase of mandatory therapy. The psychologist's report shared as part of the settlement was illuminating. Dad showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder with financial fixation. Mom displayed dependent personality traits with a gambling addiction. Madison exhibited antisocial behaviors with a pattern of manipulation. They were broken people who tried to break me to fix themselves. Understanding that didn't excuse their actions, but it helped me process my own emotions. They weren't evil masterminds. They were desperate, damaged individuals who'd chosen the wrong solution to their problems. The restraining orders held firm. A few times in those early months, I'd spot one of them at a distance. Mom at the farmer's market quickly leaving when she saw me. Dad driving past my office, carefully maintaining the required distance. Madison at the mall with the kids herding them away when our eyes met. Each sighting was a reminder of the life we'd shared and the choices that had severed it. But as time passed, the pain lessened. The acute grief transformed into a dull ache, then into acceptance. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. We were living with the consequences. 1 year later, I stood in the garden of the women's shelter I'd founded with part of my inheritance, the Dorothy Haven. It specialized in helping women escape financial abuse from their families. My story had inspired dozens of others to come forward about similar experiences. I'd learned that blood doesn't always mean family, and that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from those who claim to love you while plotting your downfall. Grandma Dorothy's portrait hung in the main hall with her favorite quote, "Truth has a way of surfacing dear. Make sure you're swimming when it does." I still grieved the family I thought I had, but I'd gained something more valuable, the freedom to build a life based on genuine connections. The shelter's first success story was a woman whose siblings had tried to steal her inheritance through similar means. As she hugged me after winning her case, she whispered, "Thank you for showing me it's okay to choose yourself." That's when I knew Grandma's money had found its true purpose. The Dorothy Haven Women's Shelter opened on a crisp autumn morning exactly 1 year after that fateful family dinner. The building, a renovated Victorian home, stood as a testament to transformation. What had once been a private mansion now opened its doors to women seeking refuge from financial predators, wearing familiar faces. I'd chosen the location carefully. It sat on Maple Street, just 3 blocks from where Grandma Dorothy had lived her entire married life. Every day, women seeking help would pass by the small house where she'd raised her children, saved her money, and ultimately seen through their greed. The proximity felt like poetic justice. The opening ceremony was small but meaningful. Sarah attended with Carl's permission, representing hope for the next generation. Mr. Hartley came having become not just my lawyer, but a trusted advisor. Dr. Winters spoke about the intersection of financial abuse and psychological manipulation. The mayor, who'd known my family for decades, carefully avoided mentioning them while praising the shelter's mission. But the most powerful moment came when our first resident, Margaret Chen, stood to speak. A soft-spoken woman in her 50s, she'd contacted us after reading about my story in the paper. Her own brothers had attempted something similar, claiming her tech startup success had made her unstable and unable to manage wealth responsibly. For months, I thought I was going crazy. Margaret said, her voice growing stronger with each word. They documented every business risk I took as mania, every moment of stress as breakdown, every success as luck I couldn't replicate. They made me doubt my own mind. She looked directly at me. Then I read about Doreen's story, about how her family did the same thing, and I realized I wasn't crazy. They were criminal. The Dorothy Haven didn't just give me shelter, it gave me validation, it gave me strength. The shelter offered more than just temporary housing. We provided legal aid therapeutic services, financial counseling, and most importantly, community with others who understood the unique betrayal of family financial abuse. The betrayal cut deeper when it came from those who were supposed to protect you. Grandma Dorothy's portrait, painted from her favorite photograph, dominated the entrance hall. In it, she wore her signature pearl necklace and a knowing smile, as if she could see through the camera into the future she was helping create. Beneath it, a brass plaque bore her favorite quote, "Truth has a way of surfacing, dear. Make sure you're swimming when it does." I found myself standing before that portrait, often having silent conversations with the woman who'd saved me even after death. Sometimes I'd update her on the shelter's progress. Other times I'd share the pain that still surfaced when I thought about my family. But mostly I'd thank her for seeing what I'd been too blinded by love to notice. The work was challenging but rewarding. Every woman who walked through our doors carried a similar story. Families who'd chosen greed over love, who'd weaponized concern into control, who'd tried to steal not just money, but autonomy and dignity. The patterns were depressingly consistent. There was Janet, whose children tried to have her declared incompetent when she refused to co-sign their business loans. Maria, whose husband's family claimed her inheritance from her late mother, made her dangerously impulsive. Leslie, whose siblings had been documenting her grief after her divorce as evidence of mental instability, planning to take control of her teacher's pension. Each story reinforced that my experience wasn't unique. Financial abuse by family members was an epidemic hidden by shame and disbelief. Society expected family to be sanctuary, not a source of predation. The Dorothy Haven gave these women permission to acknowledge the truth and protect themselves without guilt. The educational component became crucial. We held workshops on recognizing the signs of financial manipulation, understanding conservatorship laws, protecting assets from predatory relatives. We brought in experts to teach about gaslighting, emotional manipulation, and the intersection of love and greed. One evening, 6 months after opening, I was leading a support group when a familiar name came up. One of our new residents, Patricia, mentioned that her lawyer was worried about the opposing counsel, William Preston. "He specializes in these conservatorship cases," Patricia explained. "Apparently, he's very good at making families seem loving and concerned while they're robbing you blind." "Not anymore," I said quietly. "Mr. Preston is no longer practicing law." The room looked at me expectantly. I rarely shared details of my own case, preferring to focus on theirs. But this felt important. He was my family's lawyer. His pattern of ethical violations in conservatorship cases led to his disbarment. He can't hurt anyone else. The relief in Patricia's face was palpable. One predator down, countless more to go. But each victory mattered. Each woman protected was a life saved from the kind of betrayal that cut deepest. As the shelter grew, so did its impact. We partnered with legal aid societies to provide pro bono representation. We worked with adult protective services to identify potential victims before the scheme succeeded. We lobbied for stronger laws protecting adults from predatory conservatorships. The media attention helped spread awareness. My story, once a source of shame and pain, became a cautionary tale that helped others recognize the danger signs. I gave interviews, wrote articles, spoke at conferences. Each telling got easier, the wound scarring over with purpose. Sarah visited monthly, always eager to volunteer. She organized donation drives at her school, tutored residents' children, and showed a maturity beyond her 17 years. During one visit, as we sorted donated clothes, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" I paused, holding a donated sweater that looked like something Mom would wear. "I don't know," I answered honestly. Forgiveness isn't forgetting and what they did. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was months of calculated cruelty. "Dad says Mom still blames you, says you stole her life." "I know." The reports from Carl painted a picture of a woman consumed by bitterness. Madison had found work as a cashier but spent her free time obsessing over what she'd lost rather than building something new. But Grandpa's getting help, really trying in therapy. This was news. Dad had been resistant to the mandatory counseling, seeing it as punishment rather than potential healing. "That's good," I said carefully. "He wrote you a letter, asked me to give it to you." Sarah pulled out an envelope worn from being carried around. "I haven't read it. Didn't know if you'd want it." I took the letter with hands that suddenly trembled. Dad's familiar handwriting spelled out my name. The weight of it felt enormous. "You don't have to read it," Sarah said quickly. "I can throw it away if you want." "No." I slipped it into my pocket. "Thank you for bringing it. I'll decide later." That night alone in my apartment, I finally opened Dad's letter. His handwriting, once commanding and confident on those terrible documents, now looked shaky and uncertain. "Doreen," it began. "I know I have no right to contact you even through Sarah, but therapy has made me face truths I've spent a lifetime avoiding, and I need you to know that I know what we did was unforgivable." He went on to detail his sessions, his diagnosis, his growing understanding of how his need for control and financial security had poisoned every relationship in his life. He didn't ask for forgiveness or reconciliation. He simply wanted me to know that he finally understood the magnitude of their betrayal. "Your mother and sister aren't ready to see it yet," he wrote. "They're still trapped in their anger and blame. But I see it now. We didn't just try to steal money. We tried to steal your freedom, your dignity, your trust in family. That's a theft that can never be repaid." The letter ended with an update on their lives. The house was in foreclosure. Mom's gambling had accelerated under stress. Madison worked minimum wage and raged against the world. But Dad had found work as a bookkeeper for a small nonprofit, slowly rebuilding some semblance of integrity. "I don't expect you to respond or forgive," he concluded. "I just wanted you to know that one of us finally understands what we lost when we chose money over our daughter. I'm proud of what you've built with the Dorothy Haven. Mom would be proud too. The real mom, not the greedy stranger she became. Take care of yourself, Doreen. You deserve the life we tried to steal." I read the letter 3 times, then filed it away. It didn't change anything. The damage was too great, the trust too shattered. But knowing that somewhere in the wreckage, Dad was trying to rebuild himself as a better person, brought a small measure of peace. The Dorothy Haven continued to grow. By the end of our first year, we'd helped 47 women escape financial abuse from family members. Our success rate in legal battles was remarkable, partly due to the documentation strategies we taught, and partly due to the network of ethical lawyers we'd cultivated. Each success story healed something in me. When Brenda won her case against cousins trying to steal her late husband's life insurance, I saw justice. When Amy's parents' conservatorship petition was thrown out of court, I felt vindication. When Deborah's siblings were arrested for fraud, I experienced a vicarious triumph. But the real healing came from the community we built. Women who'd been isolated by their abusers found sisterhood. Those who'd been gaslit into doubting their own minds discovered validation. The shame that had kept them silent transformed into strength that helped them speak. During one particularly meaningful evening, Margaret Chen returned to speak at our anniversary dinner. She'd not only kept her company, but expanded it, using her experience to build better safeguards for other entrepreneurs. She'd also started dating again, learning to trust, after betrayal. "The Dorothy Haven gave me more than legal help," she told the assembled group. "It gave me permission to prioritize myself without guilt, to recognize that family isn't entitled to destroy you just because they share your blood." As I looked around the room at dozens of women nodding in recognition, I realized this was Grandma Dorothy's true legacy. Not just the money, but the wisdom to protect it and use it for good. Not just the inheritance, but the understanding that some people would try to steal it. Not just the wealth, but the strength to defend it. The evening ended with a toast, Sarah, now 18 and preparing for college with a scholarship she'd earned herself, raised her glass of sparkling cider. To Dorothy Brooks, she said, who saw the truth and made sure her granddaughter could swim when it surfaced. To Dorothy Brooks, the room echoed. As I raised my own glass, I felt Grandma's presence, not in any mystical way, but in the practical love that had protected me, the foresight that had warned me, the strength that had sustained me. She'd known her children's hearts and chosen to protect her granddaughter instead. Standing there, surrounded by women who'd found freedom through shared struggle, I finally understood the full scope of Grandma's gift. Yes, she'd left me money, but more importantly, she'd left me the truth about my family and the strength to act on it. She'd given me the most valuable inheritance of all the knowledge that I deserved to be valued for more than what I could provide. The Dorothy Haven stood as proof that even the deepest betrayals could be transformed into purpose. Every woman we helped was a victory over greed. Every family scheme we exposed was justice for those who'd been silenced. Every life we protected was a testament to Grandma's wisdom. As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, I stood once more before Grandma's portrait. "We're doing good work here," I whispered, "turning their greed into grace, making sure other women can swim when their truth surfaces." The painted eyes seemed to twinkle with approval. Or maybe that was just my imagination colored by gratitude and loss, and the strange peace that comes from building something beautiful, from something broken. Either way, I knew Grandma would be proud, not just of the shelter, but of the woman I'd become through surviving my family's betrayal, strong enough to stand alone, wise enough to build new connections, generous enough to help others escape what I'd endured. The money had been the catalyst, but the real inheritance was the truth. And the truth, as Grandma always said, had a way of surfacing. Thanks to her, I'd been swimming when it did. That night, I made a decision. I pulled out a fresh piece of paper and wrote a single line. "Thank you for understanding. I wish you peace in your journey forward." I signed it simply Doreen and mailed it to Dad through Sarah. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was acknowledgement that even broken people could try to heal, that even after betrayal growth was possible. Not enough to rebuild what was destroyed, but enough to honor the humanity in the wreckage. A week later, I received a simple card through Sarah, "Thank you, be well." And somehow, in that minimal exchange, I found a different kind of closure. Not the restoration of family, but the recognition that we were all human, all flawed, all capable of both great harm and small redemptions. The Dorothy Haven grew stronger every day, helping more women, changing more lives. And somewhere in town, my former family continued their separate journeys, some toward bitterness, some toward understanding all living with the consequences of choosing greed over love. But I had chosen love. Love for myself, love for Grandma's memory, love for the women who needed what I could now provide. And in that love, I found the peace that had eluded me through all the pain. Standing in the garden of the Dorothy Haven, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of hope, I knew I'd found my purpose. Grandma's money hadn't just saved me from my family's greed. It had transformed me into someone who could save others. And that more than any inheritance was a legacy worth leaving. As I turned to go inside and prepare for another day of fighting the good fight, one final thought crossed my mind. A question for everyone who might read this story, who might recognize themselves in either role. What would you do if you discovered your family valued your worth more than your well-being? Would you have the strength to choose yourself, even if it meant losing everyone you thought loved you? Can you recognize the signs of financial abuse disguised as family concern? And most importantly, do you know that you deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you have? Thank you for sharing this journey with me. May you always have the courage to swim when your truth surfaces, and may you find, as I did, that sometimes the greatest loss leads to the most important discovery, your own worth. Remember, family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who help you escape those who share your DNA, but not your values. Build your chosen family wisely, protect yourself fiercely, and never forget. You deserve love that doesn't come with a price tag. Until we meet again in another story, stay strong, stay aware, and always trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Because sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones plotting your downfall.